Hi, I'm Malin Johnson from Main Street Guyman, here with On the Bricks. And a few months ago I heard Sean Hansen from PTCI give a program about the cellular network that we have here in Guyman, and I found it so interesting that I've invited him to come and tell that to everyone today. So Sean, thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. Before I actually go through the diagrams, it's important for us to understand that our cellular network is really set up to support the strategic relationships that we have developed with AT&T Wireless, with Sprint, and with United Wireless, who is headquartered out of Dodge City, Kansas. When I first got here, and that's now 5 years ago, if you can believe that, one of the first things we did was a strategic assessment of our cellular business. And out of that assessment, we decided that we were at a competitive disadvantage. We were one step behind on technology. We didn't have the latest and greatest devices that our customers felt that they needed. And out of that assessment, we decided that we needed to have strategic partnerships with one or more of the large 4 national carriers, those being Verizon, AT&T, Sprint, and T-Mobile. And in December of 2013, we signed a strategic operating agreement with AT&T Wireless. And then that was followed with strategic agreements with Sprint and with United Wireless as well. And so the diagrams that you're going to see today, the network is a whole lot more complicated than this, 1,000 times more complicated than this. I want to kind of explain the different network components. It all starts with our customer, our little customer diagram here, and you see some red radio wave signals that are going from the customer's device up to the antennas on the cell tower. And I want to talk a little bit about those radio waves, because radio waves are very, very important in the cellular business, and not all radio waves are created equal. Cellular carriers like PTCI have licensed radio spectrum, is what we call those radio waves. And the reason that they're licensed and regulated by the Federal Communications Commission is so that cellular carriers don't have interference one with another. And the other thing about the radio waves, as I said, they're not all created equal. Some radio waves will travel a long distance from the cell tower, and others not so far. Some radio waves are better at penetrating buildings, and some not so good. So those radio waves that go a long ways and do a good job of penetrating buildings, in the industry we refer to that as low band spectrum. And PTCI is really blessed with a rich amount of that really good spectrum, the low band spectrum. And our devices, overwhelmingly, we all now have smartphones, and they're very, very powerful, but at their base, at their base level, they have a transmitter and a receiver, and they're using those radio waves to communicate with the antennas and the radios at the tower. All right, so then at the cell tower, and we don't call them cell towers, we call them cell sites, because there's a heck of a lot more there than just the tower itself. We've got the tower, of course, but at the top we have antennas and radios. We have something called an AIR, A-I-R, an antenna integrated radio at the top of our towers. And then there's fiber optic riser cable connecting those antennas and radios to a piece of equipment at the base of the tower, generally in a shelter, called a base station. And that base station takes all of the cellular traffic, whether it's voice, text, or data, from the cell site over a fiber optic cable to our backbone transport network. Also at the cell site, something that's very, very important is backup power. Every single one of our 38 cell sites has a backup generator in the event that commercial power goes out. And this year, We've experienced a blizzard, we've experienced an ice storm, and we've experienced a very, very large fire, and those events had significant impacts on commercial power. And yet the cellular network never went down because of the presence of those backup generators at each one of those cell sites. Okay, so that's the cell site. And then a fiber optic cable takes the traffic to our 3 backbone transport rings. And in this Oklahoma Panhandle, we have a serving area of about 6,300 square miles. And so at different towns and at different strategic points, we gather traffic and put them on these 3 fiber optic rings. And the circumference of these 3 rings is 700 miles of fiber optic cable. There's a west ring, an east ring, a south ring extending into the Texas Panhandle. And it's over those 3 backbone transport rings that all of the cellular, all of the internet, all of the television, and all of the traditional telephone network traffic go over those 3 rings. And those 3 rings converge right across the street here in the 5th Street building. And so that building and where they converge, and there's routers there that then direct where the traffic should go once it comes from the cellular network over the rings to the router in the 5th Street building. So after it gets transported to the router in the 5th Street building, it goes over one of 2 redundant routes down to Amarillo. And in Amarillo, we have a gateway into the AT&T network. And so it meets AT&T in Amarillo and then is transported further over fiber optic cable down to Lubbock, Texas. And in a building in Lubbock, there are AT&T voice and data cores. And both of those cores are probably in the same building in what we would call an MTSO, or a mobile telephone switching office. And this is part of AT&T's contribution to the strategic partnership. We provide the radio access network and all of the transport.
All the towers out here.
And all of the towers and all of the fiber optic cable and all of the transport back to AT&T's network. We contribute the very valuable, high quality radio waves. We contribute the local workforce. And then AT&T makes its contributions in these cores. And one of the most important things done by the core is done by an acronym. We call it an HLR, Home Location Registry. A cellular network has to be very, very intelligent. And by that I mean that the network needs to know where your device is at any given moment so that it can serve you. Whether you're in Canada or you're in New Mexico or you're in Texas or here in the Oklahoma, it has to know exactly where you're at. It needs to know that you're either on our network or the network of a qualified roaming partner. It needs to know that you're a customer of good standing, that you've paid your bill. It needs to know what services you're entitled to. As an example, some customers have international toll block on, so it needs to know. It needs to know whether your device is available to take a call. If it's not, then it's going to forward it to a voicemail platform instead. Huh. It needs to know all of these things. And it even needs to know if you're in an emergency and you dial 911, which 911 call center to route that call to. So it has to know all of these things, and those things are known by the functions performed by the Home Location Registry. So that's an important part of AT&T's contribution. And in order for the cellular network to be fully functional, the cellular network has to be interconnected with other networks. It has to be connected with the local telephone network so that a cell phone can make a call to a landline, or a landline can make a call to a cell phone. It also needs to be connected through the data core to the internet so that you can do data sessions over your phone. In order to make a call to a landline in a distant city, it has to go through the traditional long-distance network. So in order for it to be fully functional, it has to be interconnected to these other networks as well. So that's kind of the network description, and if you're ready, I'll take us through some examples then.
Sure, but real quick, how long does it take to go from the base station to Lubbock?
About 100 milliseconds, so 1/10 of a
amazing.
second. Sometimes a little bit longer, depending on certain things, but
Sure.
our objective next year is to be at less than 100 milliseconds. And speed of light, fiber optic cable, speed of light, those signals are traveling as various colors of light, and so that's why it's so fast.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay, so one of the most common calls is from a PTCI landline to a PTCI cellular. And so we just labeled this one as Guyman landline to Guyman cell. So let's say that I'm at home and I'm going to call you on your cell.
Okay.
And I don't have your cell number memorized, but I'm just going to pretend it's
But we're not gonna tell it.
580-651-1234.
There we go.
All right? We're going to pretend that it's 580-651-1234. So from my house on North Crumley, I'm going to dial that number. And our local telephone switch, also in the 5th Street building across the street here, is going to take that call. And it's going to recognize that the number is a PTCI cellular number. And because it's a very common type of call, we have direct trunks that are established down to the Lubbock AT&T voice core. Okay? So then that home location registry within the AT&T voice core in Lubbock knows that you're a PTCI customer of good record,
Usually.
what kind of services you're entitled to, and that it's fine to route this call to you because your device is available. All right? So it sends that call along with my caller ID so that you know who's calling you, up through the gateway over one of our 2 redundant transport routes to the router in the 5th Street building, and then the router puts it on the ring that sends it to the fiber optic cable that goes to the base station of the site that you're being served from, up the riser cable to the antenna, and then transmits to your receiver on your phone, where you answer happily because you know it's coming from me.
That's right.
Okay?
I said, is there a potluck this Sunday?
Right, at Oslo Lutheran Church. So another important point, though, you and I are both in Guyman for this call. All right, so we are probably only, let's just pretend, a couple of miles apart physically between you and I. But the call path is going 250 miles down to Lubbock and 250 miles back. So even though you and I are only physically a couple of miles apart, the call path while we're talking is going this 500-mile down and back route.
Right.
The entire time. And the only portion of the call that's actually going through oxygen, through the air, is between you and the cell tower you're being served from. Another very, very common type of call is a PTCI cellular call to another PTCI cellular customer. So here again, let's pretend that I'm calling you
Okay.
from my cell phone to your cell phone. And we could be served off of the same cell tower depending where we're at, or we could be served off of different PTCI cell towers. We're both physically within the panhandle. Here I am. I'm using that very, very valuable radio spectrum, the radio waves, and I place the call, and it goes to the antenna and down the tower to the base station. The base station understands that it needs to go to the fiber optic ring, and the router then sends it through the Amarillo gateway to the AT&T voice core. The core knows that I'm a valid customer, knows that you're a valid customer. We're both customers in good standing. The core knows exactly which towers we're being served from, and that you're available. All right, so it routes it back through the gateway to the router in the 5th Street building over the ring to the fiber optic cable that is serving the tower that you're located off of, up the base station, and then transmits to your receiver, and you accept the call and we visit. Okay. Here's another common call. This happens to be a Guyman PTCI cell call to somebody located outside of our serving area. And just for giggles, we decided that it would be to somebody in Oklahoma City.
Okay.
And to a cellular subscriber in Oklahoma City. So for fun, let's assume that it's during the legislative session,
Casey
and
Murdoch.
you're going to call Casey Murdoch and you're going to give him some important input on some piece of legislation that's important to Guyman and the Panhandle. Okay, so you place this call from your cell phone, uses that valuable radio wave, those radio waves to get to the tower. The base station routes it over the fiber optic cable to the ring. The ring takes it to a router. The router takes it through the Amarillo gateway to meet the AT&T network, where it's directed to the voice core. The voice core knows all of those important things that a home location registry needs to know in order to make this a valid call. Okay? All right, then it knows that you're placing a call to a cellular subscriber who's not in our home network. This home location registry knows where Casey's at. It finds him in Oklahoma City, and it says that's far off, so I need to take the call through the traditional long distance network. So it's routed through something in the long distance network called an access tandem switch. That access tandem switch then knows that it needs to go to another mobile telephone switching office that serves Oklahoma City. That mobile telephone switching office is for the carrier that Casey subscribes to. And so if Casey is our subscriber, a PTCI subscriber, then he would be roaming off of AT&T wireless in Oklahoma City, so this would be an AT&T mobile telephone switching office. If he's a customer of some other carrier, then it would be another carrier's mobile telephone switching office. And that switching office would then know what cell site that Casey's being served off of it, and it would route it over probably fiber optic cable to the base station of the cell site where Casey's being served, and then the call would get to him. So the fiber optic cable can get cut. And we refer to these rings as self-healing because in the unlikely event that they do get cut, the traffic gets routed the other way around the ring.
And so that's amazing.
It is, and we're blessed that we have that kind of technology here.
And that's probably why you show it as a circle.
Exactly. Yeah, it's not a perfect circle in the real world, but they are truly self-healing rings.
And what happens when the fiber optic is cut?
We have technicians that are on call 24/7, and we also have very sophisticated equipment that will tell us to within very short distances where the cut is likely to be in the cable, if it's our cable. Okay.
And that's something AT&T gets as part of the partnership.
They get the local workforce, and they get a very responsive local workforce that is not going to let this backhaul network ever be down very long. And we are on it as fast as we possibly can be on it. And then once we know exactly where the cut may be, we dispatch splicing crews in order to get the service restored as quickly as possible. The only thing I didn't cover here is these were all voice examples. And of course, people text, but the texting examples generally follow the same flow as the voice. Okay, so a text from cell to cell would go the same way as depicted in these. The other thing that people do with their smartphones is they have data sessions, and instead of going to the voice core, they would go to the data core, and the data core is connected to the internet. So most of these would flow generally the same way.
Now, Sean, how long have we had cell phones?
PTCI has been in the cell phone business since about 1990, so 27 and a half years or so.
And 27 and a half years, all of this has developed into this define?
We've gone through 4 generations of technology. That's what the 4G means, is the 4th generation.
Oh.
And PTCI has always been very progressive. As an example, cell service here in 1990, I happened to be living in Littleton, Colorado, which is a suburb of Denver. It's an NFL city, and there was no cell service in Littleton at that time. And so that gives you an idea of how progressive this company has been.
I know through PTCI we got our internet much faster than Amarillo did when we first got it at the city.
And we're doing our best to continue to be progressive, and that's why we're doing fiber to the home in Guyman. And so Guyman will have fiber to the home before places like Tulsa and
Do we even
Oklahoma
notice
City.
it, that you're doing that changeover?
Well, if you're out about in the community and you're seeing boring machines and you're seeing aerial crews working on the utility poles, you certainly know it. And if we're burying a drop in your backyard, you certainly know it. Or if our technicians are in your attic and doing inside wire to convert your house to fiber, you certainly know it. But we're trying to do it in a way that is not causing an inconvenience for the customer. And so we work real hard at that.
So the updating is constant.
It's really constant. And there have been so many changes to our cell service. I mentioned earlier that we struck the agreement with AT&T in December of 13. The network was commercially operational in the 3rd quarter of 2014. So this program is airing in August of 2017. So here we are at our 3-year anniversary. And just in 3 years, the cellular network has changed even more. We added 2 additional sites for Tyrone and Lake Etling in order to improve some coverage holes that we had. We expanded east with 4 sites into Harper County. So those were some changes. As the network has grown, we've had to increase the capacity of the network. So we've added some additional equipment and spectrum and things that we call carriers to certain high volume sites like here in Guyman. So that's been done. And you can never have enough spectrum. We've mentioned how valuable these radio waves are. And the FCC conducted another spectrum auction just in the last year, and it concluded in April of 2017. And PTCI was a participant in that auction, and it was an auction for the best of the best low-band spectrum that really propagates long distances and penetrates buildings the best. And it was known as the 600 megahertz auction. And the auction auctioned off territories that were known as PEAs, partial economic areas, and the PEA that we were in included southwest Kansas. So we partnered up with United Wireless and Pioneer, the Pioneer Cooperative headquartered out of Ulysses, Kansas, and the 3 of us participated as a bidding consortium, and we won. And so we have acquired additional low-band, really good spectrum. Verizon didn't acquire any in our area. So that's been a change, and we'll be able to add that spectrum to our network over the course of the next 3 years, further keeping us ahead of the curve. Another thing that has occurred in the 3 years is that customers' demand for data on their cell phones has just exploded. The demand for it is insatiable. It's because they're wanting to use it for YouTube videos, and they want to watch TVs and movies on it. And
they take their online classes and use their phone as their little computer.
Absolutely, and they use it for social media, and they exchange pictures. So anyway, the demand is insatiable. And so just in the last year, the national carriers have introduced what they call unlimited plans. And if you read the fine print, none of those unlimited plans are truly unlimited. And by that I mean that if you read the fine print, there will be some sort of data consumption threshold after which they will really slow down your data speed in order to control network congestion. And so, but they've been very, very popular. And so we have introduced just recently our unlimited version of that. And for people that have trouble staying within their data cap, I'd encourage them to just really compare. Because I think that we've got a very, very attractive solution for those sorts of folks. But over and above being on par, meeting and beating the big four with their unlimited plans, we've done something that only a local company would do. And that's, we've put out carrier Wi-Fi within the city of Guyman. And by carrier Wi-Fi, what I'm referring to is that when you have a terrestrial fixed internet connection to your house or your business, that isn't capped. It's coming in over a fiber optic cable, and then usually within your business or your home, you have a Wi-Fi router. And so whenever people visit you, their first thing they want to do is they want to put it on Wi-Fi, right?
Correct.
Well, there's an industrial strength carrier Wi-Fi solution that we've deployed in different high traffic areas within town to help our customers with that. So we've deployed it out at the Texas Activity Center. We've deployed it at the Hitch Rodeo Arena. We've got plans working in conjunction with the city to put it at Thompson Park. And we're in discussions with other people that manage locations where lots of people gather. And that way our PTCI cellular customers can use that Wi-Fi, that internet access to the internet for free without it being a contributor to pushing them over their data cap. And I don't think that there's any other carrier in town providing free carrier grade Wi-Fi. So that's something else that we've done. And one final thing that I want to talk about is something that's very exciting and very necessary for public safety. 16 years ago, nearly 16 years ago, we had the tragedy of 9/11. And coming out of that, the government recognized that there was a tremendous need for a first responder mobile network. Because in the event of an emergency, the first thing everybody does is use their cell phone, and it clogs the networks. And so there needs to be a network that is prioritized and other traffic is preempted from using it so that it's available for the exclusive use of the emergency responders. And in March of this year, AT&T was identified by the government as the national contractor for the building of this nationwide emergency responder network, which is called FirstNet.
FirstNet.
And AT&T, even though it has a robust nationwide network, it doesn't have a network everywhere. So it needed some rural partners around the United States in order for it to fill in all of the space that needed to be filled in. And PTCI has been selected as AT&T's rural partner for FirstNet in the Oklahoma Panhandle. That's a real good thing for us. It's a good thing for our emergency responders in the Panhandle. But it is also using another block of very, very, very valuable low band spectrum, radio waves that go a long ways and penetrate. And when it's not needed for the emergency responders, it's available for our use in a commercial way with our cellular network.
So your customers get to use that.
Exactly, when the emergency responders don't need it.
Right.
So there have been all of these developments in a short 3 years, and I think that the public is understanding that we're doing our best. We're far from perfect, but we're doing our best, and we're continuing to make progress. And as a result of that, we're getting very close to having 8,000 subscribers on our cellular network.
Is that one of your goals?
It is a goal. We hope to be there before the end of the year. And it's no longer looking impossible.
Well, I do know that as a community corporation, you guys are one of the very best with Main Street, with the chamber, with the college, that you're wonderful. And so we all know that we benefit when you do, so
Doing the best we can.
good luck.
That's about all I've got, Malin. Thank you.
All right, thanks.